Good evening. My name is Mike Guile, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this organization. We've had an opportunity today to have a workshop and also visit with some other people, and I've heard from our speakers who you're going to hear from more tonight about, or from, talking about their areas and what they've done. And I think what you're going to hear and what you'll leave with is a concept which is really the first step of moving ahead with some regionalization, some planning, some discussion, to working together that needs to happen for Northern Colorado to be successful. And again, as I've mentioned earlier, this all started when the state demographer said that this area that we're in, its population is going to increase between 750,000 and 1 million people by the year 2050. And the reason why I got involved with this project is because of that. I have backgrounds that can be helpful to this organization and experiences, but I also feel I have an obligation to come forth and do everything I can to help this community come together and start working. Because if we don't, can you imagine what it might be like serving 1 million people in the next 40 years, and what could happen if we don't sit down and try to do it right? So, on behalf of myself and the, what's the organization again? Board of Directors, we want to welcome you and thank you for attending, and please enjoy this tonight because it's going to give you, I think, some very, very strategic information. But I'd like to introduce John Daggett, who's the Executive Director of, thank you.
He's interesting, isn't he? Okay, well, I just want to sort of try to frame things for you. We have a wonderful couple of keynote speakers tonight, in Robert Groh and Boo Thomas from Louisiana and from Salt Lake City, who will entertain us, inspire us, inform us, and maybe even frighten us a little bit in terms of, but that's probably my job this evening, is to set the stage for that. So we live in a changing world, and things all around us are changing, and things are changing in Northern Colorado. For those of you who were at the workshop today, a lot of the same slides, so I apologize, and I'll go quickly, but I do want to share this with the larger group. We're here to listen. We're here, and if you look in the back of the room, we're here to listen to lots of people. Not just people with a particular perspective, one perspective or another. We're here to listen to lots of folks. And I think it would be true for me to say, and I'll say this for the board as well, that if you're a business person and you want to make business work in Northern Colorado, we're your biggest supporter. If you are an environmentalist and want to preserve and enhance the natural beauty of this place, we are your biggest supporter. If you are raising kids and you're a family man or woman, we're your biggest supporter. We want to help bring together this community in a way that it's been difficult to do over the past few years. So, since our world is changing, I just thought I'd introduce you to these two young girls. It's Mackenzie and Matilda. They live here in Northern Colorado. And most of the information that I'll give you tonight will be forecasted to the year when they're about 45 years old, so that you have a feel for that. And they're darling kids. So we also had a group of CSU students help us today, and they will be 60 years old when these things come to pass. Of course, they're 20 now. 1.4 million people in Larimer and Weld counties is the state demographer's forecast. This chart is a simple chart of growth that's projected by the state demographer. The blue line is Weld County, the red line is Larimer County. Nobody wins necessarily in terms of having that many people here, but there are ways to work towards having quality growth in the future. Another way to look at it is that up until 1970, it took us about till that period of time to have 180,000 people in both counties. We added 400,000 in the last 40 years. We will add 800,000 in the next 40 years, or at least that's the prediction. Lots of people coming to live with us. In the year 2011, oh, it's 2011. We forgot that we were all getting older, and that big spike in the middle of the chart are people turning 65. So you will see that that trend continues on into the future, in the foreseeable future. And so some of the data behind that is that by the year 2015, every 15 minutes a child will be born, and every 15 minutes 2 people will turn 65. So you kind of get the sense of where that's headed and what we're doing. By the year 2030, there'll be 3 times as many people over the age of 65 as there were in the year 2000 living in Colorado. The U.S. Census Bureau tells us that in 1970, about 9% of our population was 65 or older. In the year 2050, 17%, a complete doubling of that. Our households are changing. The blue bars are 1970, the red bars are 2006, and what you see along the bottom of the chart is 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, and 4 plus. That's the number of people that are living in households. What that means is that in 1970, the change between 1970 and 2006, there's been a big increase in northern Colorado, in Colorado in general, in 1 person per household families, households, 2-person households, but a big drop off in larger families, which is the trend that's going on across the country, and it's no different here. All of these demographic changes also have impacts on the various systems that are here. This chart happens to be about transportation. So these are person trips. In 1970, we barely made 600,000 or 700,000 person trips a day. A person trip is if I leave my home and I go to work, that's a person trip. So that population didn't take very many. But by 2050, there will be 5 million person trips a day in northern Colorado. Can't imagine how people are going to get around, how congested the roads are going to be with that many more times. The amount of vehicles or people on transit trying to get around, or bikes or walking. Water is the same way. And those charts look very similar, don't they? The Natural Resource Law Center at CU tells us that we use about 208 gallons of water a day in Colorado per person. We do a little bit better in Fort Collins and Greeley and Loveland than that number. But based on that average, we will use somewhere in excess of 320 acre-feet of water, or need 326,000 acre-feet of water. And what that means in real numbers, in terms of gallons, is multiply 320,000 acre-feet times 326,000 gallons, and you will get the number of gallons of water that likely would be consumed at that rate. So there are impacts to growth as we move along, and so we wanted to raise those issues with you. But I wanted to share with you that there are lots of things that happen over a 40-year period of time. And the first thing is an IBM 370 computer and an iPad. One's in 1970, one's in 2010, and you can see the one on the left, let's see, the one on your right is the iPad, which is about 1 million times more powerful than the IBM 370 computer was in 1970. So you can get a feel for that as we move forward. Chevy Impala, great car in 1970, 14 miles to the gallon, polluted like crazy. Our CO2 problems that we've just recently resolved were a part of that great engine that they had in that car. Went really fast, used a lot of gas. In 2010, we have an Impala that has navigation system, sunroof, MP3 players, individually climate-controlled adjustments on the dash of your car, and gets 29 miles to the gallon and barely pollutes at all. So we've made some progress in that 40 years, but that's how quickly that turns around. phonograph player, MP3 player. On the MP3 player, there's 50,000 songs and photos and videos. On the phonograph, you have to flip that record over to get to the sixth cut on the record, you know, and you wear it out. It runs out of steam. In 1970, we had X-rays in hospitals. Today, we have CT scans. One's a two-dimensional tool, good technology, saved a lot of lives, repaired a lot of bones. But the CT scan will take 3D images of your brain and your arm and your leg and your foot, and goes a long ways into helping us recover from injuries and disease and that sort of thing. So, the last few slides. So we are a part of an emerging mega region. That region runs from Pueblo, Colorado Springs to Fort Collins, Greeley, Cheyenne. And what demographers tell us is that 50% or more of the growth in the United States will occur in these regions over the next century. What they also tell us is that 66% of the economic growth in America will occur in these mega regions. We are in the top 11. I think if you include Salt Lake, we're in the top 12, something like that. But we're really close to that top 10, breaking through that top 10 barrier. If that's where most of the growth is going to occur, then there are implications for that growth as well. There are also opportunities. So people will have greater employment opportunities and greater opportunities for recreation and culture and the arts and all of that. So it's not all negative, even though it is a challenge as we move forward. So these last set of maps that I wanted to share with you, I wanted to start with that background color is actually green on my screen. I don't know if it's really green on yours. But there are three colors there: green, or the light beige, a yellow color, and a red color on these maps. And they really refer to rural agricultural areas, the green. Yellow is exurban, which is the 35-unit parcel that gets developed and large estates. And then the red is the urbanizing areas. So I'm going to take you through about 80 years worth of this so that you can kind of get a feel for where we've been and where we're going. This set of data was compiled by Dr. David Theobald at Colorado State University, and he probably guessed wrong, but it's an educated guess in terms of what will happen in the future, and certainly we can refine this as we go. So 1960 is what we looked like then. And as we go through the decades, 70, 1980, and you can see the growth beginning to occur in northern Colorado, 1990, 2000, 2010, and these are now projections, 2020, 2030, 2040. Where did all that rural agricultural land go? His projection is that it disappears on us. I don't know that that necessarily is a foregone conclusion or something that we necessarily have to accept, but it is a projection, a guess in terms of how the future looks. I'm going to go back to 1960 so we can compare 1960 to 2040. Here's 1960, and here's the growth projected through 2040. So you get a kind of a feel for what's coming our way. 1.4 million people has a pretty big impact in terms of development. So that's my presentation, and what I'd like to do is turn this over to Angie Maluski, give her a warm round of applause. She is the co-chair for Embrace Northern Colorado. Thank you.